Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Tony Coleman. Today I'm going to kind of give you a walkthrough of the damage that I'm dealing with from the fire that I had. Some of you didn't realize I had one, but yeah, back in January we had a house fire. It wasn't bad. I mean, it's a house fire, but it could have been totally worse, horrible. You know, somebody could have got hurt, but nobody did. So basically, right here, we're in my bedroom right now. And as you can see, these wires are still in the wall. That's coaxial cable. There's an electrical wire there. And basically right above this black wire, about EA high, was an outlet. Now, that outlet was the only outlet on that whole circuit. And there wasn't very much plugged into it whatsoever. But if you follow up where it went through the ceiling, let's see if I get a good angle here. All right, so basically if you look right up there, you can see where the joists have been singed. And that is basically where the fire started. And we caught it pretty early, but it was at like 4:30 in the morning. We woke up to the smell. And we had to go looking around because there wasn't a whole lot of smoke. We could just smell it. And so it wasn't until I opened up the attic door that's above my laundry room and a big burrow of smoke came out from there. But up above here, we had a ton of insulation. It's the blown in insulation, probably about 18 inches worth, because we just had it redone like maybe 2 years ago at most. But the other problem we had is the fire department only had to take out one little bitty spot here and then trail it up overhead and then put out the fire basically right above us. And they thought they were done. So they left, and about 10 a.m. we brought an electrician to see if we could get power restored to the house so that we could still use it. Construction could be done, expedite things, and you kind of need power. And opened the front door, smoke keeps rolling back out. So obviously fire was still going. So then we got to looking, we got up in the attic area, and sure enough, right at my attic door, up here, was yet another fire that was going also. So fire went all the way from up here through the ceiling over and then started again here in my hallway. So with that fire, the fire department decided, no, we're just going to tear out all the ceilings, drop 18 inches of insulation down on everything, and then scoop all that insulation, or a big portion of it, out the door, and then they were going to hose it down in my driveway. So anything that was on my floors, anything that got knocked onto my floors, because it was my bedroom, all that coming down, everything just got scooped up, thrown in a big pile, and they hosed it down. So if I had electronics, keepsakes, anything, didn't matter. It got scooped up, thrown in that pile, and hosed. Then the only water they had in the house was they just took a bucket of water and put out the fire here. They didn't even need to run hoses in here. They didn't have to do extensive. But the mass majority of everything you're seeing here was caused by the fire department. They did all that damage basically to make sure that they got all the fire. I'm not saying that there's any fault on their part. I'm saying they did their job. But when it came to the fire that I had, it was basically that, and then in my hallway, another spot, and that was it. There was no soot damage, no open flames for anybody to, get caught fire on, and wasn't any problems with really breathing, even though it's not good for you. But that was the extent of the actual fire part. Now, I didn't have anything heavy running. We weren't mining any crypto. We weren't running a dozen systems or anything. It was literally one outlet. I think I had my TV plugged into it and maybe like a charger or something. Nothing that should have pulled any kind of power that would have been, problematic. Now, problems with the outlet, even though the outlet didn't get singed and no problems with damaging the outlet, when we pulled it out, we did see that the previous owner had clipped the ground wire. Yes, it was a 3-prong outlet, so no, you should never, ever, ever clip the ground wire if you're going to use a three-prong outlet. You shouldn't really clip the ground wire ever because that's a safety measure. But even without the ground wire, that shouldn't have been what caused it. So we're thinking most likely, I'm not an expert, but most likely what happened is when he pulled his wire overhead, he probably caught it on something, kinked it, or scraped some of the coating off to weaken it or whatever. It was a 14 gauge wire, which they don't normally put in houses anymore, especially in this area. They do still put them in some trailers, but even at 14 gauge, the power draw that was being used on a 15 amp circuit shouldn't have been enough to cause the problem. So we're guessing that it was a faulty wire in general. He probably damaged it when he ran it. It was the only thing. It was a straight wire all the way into the closet here, which is where the circuit breaker is. And yes, he also clipped the ground wire there. So basically, he already had everything opened up. He could have just spent 20 seconds wiring up the ground and it would have been done right, but he didn't. But that, again, the ground wire is a separate issue. That's not what caused the fire. Fire was probably just faulty wiring that had been damaged in the process of running it. So yeah, that's what I've been dealing with since January 31st. This entire room, which is covered, this is my master bedroom, and yeah, it was a huge mess. All they've done is tore out my carpet, tore out a little bit of drywall, cleaned a lot of that stuff up. They got electrical put back on in here as a temporary solution. They still have to do some more wiring, and then they have to basically repaint every room in my house. They're rerunning all the carpet throughout the entire house. They are redoing the vinyl flooring everywhere except my kitchen. Basically, my kitchen is the only place not getting new flooring, which is kind of dumb, but they're trying to save a few bucks. So I will say this whole process has definitely been a learning experience, and I can say that if I had to do it again, I probably would not go through a mitigation company, the company I'm going through. I won't name their name because I don't want to be accused of defamatory accusations or anything like that, but I can tell you now that they have not been what they advertise, and State Farm, my insurance company, also had a different understanding of what they would do too, and it's just not been 100%. So if I had to redo it, I would just call everyone myself, because either way, no matter who you go through, you're still on the hook for all the contracts and all the debt anyway. So as far as cleaning goes, you can do some research and find that there's not a whole lot special about the cleaning they do that you can't just do yourself. It's not that complicated. But yeah, they are spending tons of money on a very small fire. And here's the big reason why. When you have fire damage, usually it's two different types of fires. You usually have the fire that everyone imagines where almost everything gets burned down and everything's cindered, crisped, or whatever, or just covered in soot. The black smoke is covering everything. And then you have, like what I have, there was no soot, but the smoke still was there and got on everything. So the problem with that is there's a lot of carcinogens. They can cause cancer long term, and I have children. So if my children are going to be playing the carpet or whatever, I don't want them playing in all that stuff. And so they have to mitigate that, clean it up, get rid of it, whatever, so that you don't have to risk the potential cancer from that. So with my fire, it's terrible for me because they can't just walk in and say, oh yeah, that's a total loss. They can't just say, oh, that's easy, that was burned, so we can get rid of it. They can't look at it and say, that has soot on it. Soot in itself isn't that big of a deal until you try to clean it. Now, if you clean it quick, not such a big deal. It can be hard to clean, yes. But what typically happens if you have soot damage is that the fire department had to run their hoses and water everything down. When you mix soot with water, it becomes very acidic. And then it sits there, and it sits there, and it sits there, because nothing about a fire is quick other than the fire. So while everyone's doing the red tape, everyone's getting their estimates, everyone's calling around, figuring out what they're going to do, that soot is just eating away at whatever it's covering. So any of the wood, paint, plastics, doesn't matter. It's basically just eating it. It's chewing it up. And so that's where a lot of the damage comes from. Most of your fires, other than something being burned to a crisp, most of the damage, the actual expense damage, comes from the fire department. Because they're running all the water through it. You got all water damage, potential mold. You got the soot damage that's mixing with the water and becomes acidic. It damages the stuff. You've got anything that the fire department actually tears out, like my ceilings. If they bust through doors, whatever, that's damage. And that all has to be replaced. And it nickels and dimes them. But a lot of the damage is actually caused by the fire department. And a lot of people don't think of it that way. And it's true. And it should be that way because they are trying to save you and they're trying to put out this fire and they've got to make sure they got it all. Unless you're like me and had a case where they didn't do due diligence and actually search around to make sure they got it all. And then you end up having a second fire. But with my case, it was the invisible smoke. So every article of clothing has to be cleaned, every linen, blanket, whatever, all has to be cleaned. They have to clean out all your ductwork. If you have a lot of carpet, they should replace your carpet because no matter how much cleaning you do on that, there's still going to be something left in it. It's not always going to be 100%. Might as well just get rid of it. It's quicker, it's cheaper, long term anyway. As far as the walls go, I mean, yeah, you can wash them and stuff, but it's just a lot easier and more guaranteed if you just seal it up by painting over it. And they'll probably do a quick, scrub job or something, but end of the day, they're just going to paint over it, and then that way I don't have to worry about it. So yes, they do clean. Yes, they do use the different equipment to clean the air so that work can start and people can breathe without having to have complex biohazard, setups. But the reason the invisible smoke ones is so much harder is because an adjuster can't just walk in and say, well, since that's covered with soot, we know it's damaged because acid destroys things. So we have to try cleaning it. And they're going to say, once it's been cleaned, you can have it back, but we'll pay them to clean it unless it's not worth cleaning. And then it gets in tit for tat. The cleaning company goes, well, it's not worth us cleaning because you'll spend more money paying us to clean it than what it's worth. So then they got to make an itemization list and they submit it for you and all that. And it becomes a huge monotonous pain in the butt. So you cannot imagine the amount of time that you will spend dealing with the after effects of fire. Just itemizing things to claim for loss is taxing. I mean, if you got a tube of toothpaste, you don't use it. You're not allowed to touch it. You're allowed to touch it, but you're not supposed to. Why? Because it could be toxic. So they want you to throw it out. And instead, you write it off as a loss. Brushes, combs, screwdrivers. I mean, how many screwdrivers do you have laying around your house? Batteries, stuff like that. And they're not going to clean each item. So instead, you're supposed to itemize anything that's not cleanable that the cleaning company isn't going to take. And then you let them decide, okay, do we depreciate this? So you may have had a brush for 4 years. How do you depreciate the value of a brush? Kind of weird. But yes, the insurance companies will assess all that and they'll be like, okay, brush probably $5 or whatever. They'll come up with something that's reasonable. And or you could even say this was $4. We got it from Walmart and it was $4. They're probably not going to argue with too much on a brush, as long as it's not like, oh, you spent $20 on a 25-cent brush. No. So unless you're doing something squirrely like that, they're just going to say, yeah, it was probably $4. We're not going to argue it tit for tat. Now, if they really want to micromanage everything, which sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, they may say, well, since it's 4 years old, we're going to depreciate that 50%. 25%, whatever, and they will knock $1 off, $2 off, whatever. At least you got your $2 out of your comb or brush. So, groceries. Like, I had a freezer full of food. You got to throw it out. Yeah, it's sealed, but unless you got another freezer to put it in, you're pretty well gonna be throwing it out because it's going to go bad. You're not going to find a hotel that has a freezer. You're not going to have a hotel that has a big enough refrigerator. So the most of your stuff you're just going to toss out. So you're supposed to replace all that. And the problem with that is they say, well, how much do you average every week on groceries? Well, if I tell you that, then I go buy groceries to replace what you did. You're going to say, oh, well, that's what you would have bought anyway. I'm saying, well, yeah, but at the same time, I had to throw it all away. And it was all new. So, shouldn't we replace it all new? And then you go back and forth. The adjusters love nickel and diming. And it's literally everything. Like, we had to walk out of our home, and they told us, don't even grab clothes. Don't touch anything. We don't want you touching it. We don't want you cleaning it. You clean it, then it's on you if you get cancer, basically, is what they were saying. So they wanted us to leave everything, let the cleaning company take care of it, and then us just go out and buy some new clothes. That's great and all, except, you have to have that money up front. And sometimes they'll cut you a check in advance, but, if you're in your pajamas, do you really want to sit at your agent's office going, hey, can you cut me a check so I can run by the bank real quick, deposit it, then go by Walmart or Target or wherever to get some basic clothes? It's a pain in the butt. So if you don't have some kind of funds or resources at your disposal, you might want to set some back somewhere safe so that you have some. Luckily, we weren't too bad. We had family in town, and we had some random clothes in different spots, but for the most part, we did okay. We got by fine. We didn't ask for any help. It was one of the most convenient times ever to have a very big inconvenience. So we were one of the lucky ones who didn't have to rely on everyone else, for everything. So don't pity me. We're doing good. It's just a headache. All of this is a headache. And what can you do? It's not something that I did to cause it. It wasn't something that was planned. It's not something anybody really wants to do, but it happened. Ideally, nobody would have been home. The whole place could have burned down, and then I could just wrote off everything as a loss, and it would have been easy peasy. But we would have lost everything, and we would have had to deal with, keepsakes, heirlooms, anything that's not replaceable, and nobody wants to really want to lose all that. But as far as simplicity, a total loss would have been easier. But now we're dealing with trying to get the construction going. We've waited 6 months already due to back and forth communication problems and delays and people dragging their feet and everything else. Here we are 6 months later waiting on construction to start. This entire project should have been done within 4 to 6 weeks to begin with. And here we are still being told it's anywhere from a month and a half to 3 months before we'll be back in our home. So, happy news. Not so happy news. Either way, just giving you guys an update. Just kind of letting you know just how fun that is. not much. So, got any questions? Feel free to drop them down in the comment section down below. I'd be happy to let you know my experiences on things. I could go on a lot longer, a lot more detail. This could be a whole series of videos, the headaches that I've had to go through with all this. I probably won't go through all of it because, you know, again, nobody really wants to hear me ramble on any more than they already have. So that's what I got for you today. Until next time, have a good one.